hopefully will guide me as I talk to you really for the next 10 to 15 minutes, and then really want to open up for questions and answer and really engage in the dialogue to hopefully get you to ask me any questions that you think will be front of mind. So let me tell you a little bit about myself first, and then I'm really going to talk about three things. And those three things are around the importance of sponsors, networks and relationships. The second thing is around just some general do's and don'ts, some of the things that I've learned the hard way as I've navigated my career through large corporates in 18 countries, and a little bit around how to proactively manage your career into whichever chosen career field you move into. And in that context, a little bit around women in leadership and leadership more broadly. So a little bit about myself. So my name's Louise Meadows. As you can see or hear, I'm not originally from Australia. I arrived here 7 years ago, actually, next week, and started my career having left university in a beautiful old university, very different to this one in Hull, in the northeast of England, where I graduated with an honours degree in business, finance, and in those days, personnel and human resources. And I've had pretty much an entire career. My area of expertise and specialism is human resources, particularly talent, leadership, culture, other areas, organisational development, and things that I specialise in. But I have been very fortunate that I've been able to have that career in a number of organisations in a number of industries. And that's one of the things that I will maybe touch on, which is in relation to getting breadth and depth within your career and the importance of that as you move through the leadership path.
If anyone wants to move forward, because it's hard to hear in this room, please do. There's a couple of seats here. The microphone just comes forward. Sorry.
So having left university with my degree in the early 90s, it was very difficult at that point in time to get a role in human resources, which is definitely the area that I wanted to specialise in. So I decided that the next best option was to move into an industry that at least I knew a little bit about, which was retail, having worked all the way through university in shops and different kind of retail industry. So really finding an opportunity in what I already knew. And I moved in for a very short space of time into the retail sector. Not in human resources, in general management, because it was the only way I could actually get a job at that point in time. Very quickly, though, within 18 months, I was running my own £3.5 million store, and very quickly I was trying to find a way out of retail and back into my chosen area, which was human resources. And I did that by finding an opportunity within my work, which was running a large store, to get involved in training and development, and was letting my leaders and my people who I reported to, that was an area of interest for me. And very quickly I became known as somebody who was interested in training, and so was quickly utilised outside of my traditional kind of store manager role. That then led to a change of city. I moved from Manchester through to Glasgow, and a change of industry, which was the start of an 8-year career in the utilities business, starting off with Scottish Telecom, Scottish Power, to large utilities, telecommunications, power, gas, electricity in the UK, and a very interesting time in their evolution. And that was the first role that I was recruited into a training and development type role. So the first time that I was actually able to use my degree in any kind of capacity. And my role was really pretty much a team member, working alongside a number of other people, training and developing a large range of different industries or different professions. I then moved in and really stayed in that role or in that industry for 8 years and went back to university to do my postgraduate diploma in human resource management at that time and really progressed in my career through to what we call organisational development into a more traditional HR manager's route. I then, at the age of 30, with a fantastic role as head of human resources with a large team, decided that I kind of had my first of several midlife crises and decided to pack everything up and go travelling around the world for 18 months, which I did, and it brought me to beautiful Melbourne for the very first time, and I basically travelled for a year. And it was during that time I decided, to take a little bit of time out to decide what I wanted to do when I grew up. And when I went back to the UK, and what I decided was that actually I loved my profession and I was keen to get back in, but I wanted to maybe change industries. And as a result of coming back to no role, I pretty much was free to choose whichever industry that I wanted to go into. And it's at that point in time that I made the transition into media and television. So I worked for Sky Television and for a whole range of kind of smaller regional telecommunications and media like Foxtel, those kind of organisations in the UK. I had a number of roles in those organisations, only to quickly discover that that industry wasn't actually suitable for me. It didn't really align with my leadership style, it didn't align closely to the values that I had and wanted to work within. So it's an important lesson in terms of being really clear about the types of organisations you are prepared to work for, and you quickly figure out you are not aligned. And that then brought me to the financial services sector. And I started to work for a little unknown bank in the UK called Clydesdale in Yorkshire, who are owned by a very large bank, who is the National Australian Bank here in Australia. So they own a number of banks in the UK. And I went to work for them as a business partner and very quickly moved into a head of organisational development type role. And given that I'd spent some time in Melbourne, and given that this was an Australian-owned business, I decided to tell everybody who would listen to me that actually I was quite keen to come back to Australia. And whilst they sent lots of Australians over to run the UK bank, not many UK people had made the transition to Australia. But if you ask enough people enough times, then eventually somebody actually takes you up on the offer. And in May 2007, I was seconded to Australia for 2 years.
Is that better?
Yes, maybe down here. And 7 years later, I'm still here. So, and consider Australia my home. I'm a resident here now. And 7 years ago was the start of a fairly trajectory, I guess, into corporate Australia and into some of the more senior roles that I've been fortunate to hold in this stage of my career. And in the last 7 years, I have worked closely with the CEO, with the group executive finance director in National Australia Bank, predominantly working with them on their talent, culture, leadership strategy, which is part of their differentiated strategy to become back to number one bank. In September of last year, that role came to an end and I left now after an 11-year career with financial services. And my intention was to take 6 months off, spend some time with my children, go back to the UK for a little while and make another decision as to what's going to happen next for me. But as always, life doesn't quite work out that way, and within 3 weeks I was approached by Melbourne Water to come and work for them in a consulting capacity. for a month originally, and I'm still there. So again, opportunities find you very often, and it was good to be back in the utility industry, in a heavy industry. The water industry really is an interesting place to be, particularly in Melbourne at the moment. So that's where I am at the moment. So that's a little bit about my career to date. Throughout that journey, I guess I've learned a couple of things about being a woman in very often male-dominated industries. The financial services sector, the utility sector, the water sector are predominantly male-oriented organisations. And very often throughout my career I've been the only woman in the leadership team, or indeed any kind of environment that I've operated in. And I guess that really sparked my interest, an already active interest in the whole challenge around women in leadership more particularly. And that's how I also ended up becoming a board director of the 100% project, which Dominique mentioned at the beginning. And I can tell you a little bit about my involvement in that not-for-profit. But before I do that, as I said, I wanted to talk about three key things in relation to some of the lessons that I've learned during that career over 2 countries, over 3 or 4 different industries. And the first one is the power and the strength of having strong sponsors, network, and also relationship inside and outside of your profession and also your industry. Let me talk a little bit about sponsorship first. What we mean about sponsorship is in having somebody in your organisation who is watching out for you in your career. And that can both be a man or a woman, but normally somebody who's in a position of authority. Because whilst there is the notion that we work hard and we're good at what we do, and that's a very honourable notion, the hard reality is, as you navigate your way through large organisations, through careers, whilst working hard and being really technically very good at what you do, it's as much about the sponsorship and the relationships and the networks that you have. I went for an interview last week, and that's the first interview that I've had in 15 years. It was quite scary. And the only reason why I've been promoted 7 times in that 15 years without an interview is because of my reputation. So you have to be known for something, but also because of the sponsorship, the networks and the relationships that I have invested in over that time. So not to underestimate the importance of those relationships and networks. And very often women in particular find that very difficult. But it's also something that traditionally, I'd like to think that is becoming increasingly less so. You know, the notion of the old boys network and club still thrives in corporate Australia, particularly if you choose to go into industries such as the banking industry. It's just a harsh reality. So the importance of having good, strong networks with senior leaders, but also other women and other people outside of your network is really important, because that's how very often you have other people talking for you, talking about you, advocating for you. And so when an opportunity arises, it's often through that network or that relationship that you are approached. Or if you then go for an interview, that you've got a good reputational base. My approach by Melbourne Water was purely as a result of A, my reputation in the industry, and B, somebody who I knew really well was working there.